I never thought of myself as the kind of man who would be blindsided. I prided myself on reading people, understanding their motives, sensing the slightest shifts in their behavior. But that night, I learned just how blind I had been. Let me take you back. I met Melissa in college. She wasn't just beautiful, she had this infectious energy, the kind that made people want to be near her. She could light up a room just by walking into it, and somehow, for some reason, she chose me. We were inseparable. Every guy envied me, every girl hated her, and I thought that meant something. I thought that meant we had something unbreakable. And then there was Mark, my best friend since we were kids. We grew up together, scraped our knees on the same sidewalks, got into fights, and had each other's backs. If there was one person in this world I trusted besides my wife, it was him. He was the best man at my wedding. He held my firstborn before I did. When things got rough, he was always there, or at least I thought he was. Looking back, there were signs. The way Melissa laughed a little too hard at his jokes. How Mark always seemed to show up when I wasn't home. The way they shared glances, these quick, fleeting moments I brushed off because, why wouldn't I? He was my best friend. She was my wife. What kind of man questions that? I should have. Valentine's Day. The day everything fell apart. The doorbell rang. I was expecting a package, maybe a neighbor needing a favor. Instead, I opened the door to see Mark standing there, smirking like a man who had already won. In his hands, a bouquet of roses. I frowned. What's this? Mark chuckled, shaking his head. Call my baby or we're going to be late. For a second, I didn't even understand. The words didn't make sense. Call my baby. I blinked, confusion clouding my thoughts. Then, behind me, I heard the click of heels. Melissa. She walked past me, not even stopping to look at my face, not acknowledging the wreckage she was about to leave in her wake. In her hand, a stack of papers. She pressed them into my chest with the same care someone would use to hand over a grocery list. Here are the divorce papers, she said, her voice eerily calm. Tomorrow you should leave the house. And just like that, my world collapsed. Mark shifted his weight, grinning like a schoolboy getting away with something. I think he even laughed under his breath, shaking his head like I was some kind of joke. That's when it happened. Something inside me snapped. A deep primal fury buried beneath years of trust and love and stupidity exploded. I don't remember thinking. I don't remember deciding. All I remember is bone meeting. Bone. My fist connected with Mark's mouth first. I felt the crunch, the sickening give of teeth breaking under my knuckles. He staggered, falling against the doorframe, roses scattering across the floor like the cheap, meaningless things they were. Melissa screamed. I turned to her. She tried to run, but I caught her by the wrist. She shrieked in protest, twisting, but I was done being the fool. My other hand swung, not as hard, but just enough. Enough to send her stumbling back, her own teeth rattling loose. Enough to let her know she wasn't walking away from this untouched. She looked up at me, her face frozen in shock. And then I smiled. Because this was just the beginning. I wasn't always like this. Before that night, I was the kind of man who believed in hard work, loyalty, and family. I woke up every morning at 5 a.m. to make sure I could provide the best life possible. I busted my aces in a career that drained me, came home exhausted, and still found the energy to be a father, a husband, a best friend. I believed that if you did right by people, they would do right by you. That's what my father taught me. That's what I live by. And now I knew the truth. Melissa and I met in college. She was studying marketing. I was breaking my back through engineering. We were different, but that's what made it work. She had this fire in her, this ability to talk her way into or out of anything. And me? I was the quiet one, the logical one. While she charmed professors and networked her way into job opportunities, I spent my nights in the library drowning in equations. She made life exciting. She pulled me out of my shell, made me feel like I wasn't just some cog in a machine. We fell hard, fast, and before I even knew what was happening, I was down on one knee, ring in my pocket, heart pounding like a drum. Our wedding was small but perfect. Mark was my best man, because of course he was. He gave a speech about brotherhood, about how lucky I was to have found a woman like Melissa, and I believed every single fucking word. Then came the kids. Two beautiful boys. My pride, my reason for every damn thing I did. I worked long hours, sometimes weeks without a real break, but it was all for them, for her, to build a future, a home, a legacy. And while I was breaking myself for them, she was breaking me behind my back. That night, after I shattered Mark's fucking smile and watched Melissa stumble back, something deep inside me changed. I wasn't the man who swallowed his anger anymore. Mark groaned, clutching his mouth, blood seeping through his fingers. You, you crazy fuck, Reich, he mumbled through broken teeth. Melissa, she just stared at me, eyes wide, hand over her split lip. You're a monster, she whispered. I laughed. I actually laughed. A monster? I took a step toward her and she flinched. No, Melissa, you turned me into this. She tried to step back, but I grabbed the divorce papers she had the audacity to shove into my chest and ripped them in half right in front of her face. You think you're just going to walk away? That you and him are going to play house while I'm out on the street? I shook my head. Number, you're not leaving with my kids. You're not taking my house. And you're sure as Hamar not walking away from this. Her mask started to crack. The kids already know, she blurted. Something in my stomach turned to ice. What? She straightened, wiping the blood from her lip. I told them weeks ago, about Mark and me, about how we're going to be a family. They understand. My vision went black for a second. I could barely hear over the sound of my own breathing. Weeks. She had been planning this for weeks. My boys, my sons, had been told that their father was nothing more than a disposable afterthought. Mark pushed himself up against the doorframe, still groggy, still fucking smiling. Face it, man, he coughed. You lost. You just didn't see it coming. I lost? Oh no, they lost. I don't remember lunging at Mark again, but suddenly we were on the ground, my hands wrapped around his throat. He gasped, struggling, but I didn't let go. Not until I heard Melissa screaming, not until the front door burst open, not until I felt hands grabbing me, yanking me back. I turned, my chest heaving, to see my sons. They had been watching, and their faces, they weren't filled with fear. They were filled with rage, and in that moment, I knew. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning of something much, much bigger. Melissa always wanted more attention, more admiration, more excitement. She wasn't the kind of woman who could be satisfied with a stable life, with a man who worked himself to the bone for her and their children. No, she needed fireworks. She needed the rush of something forbidden, the thrill of sneaking around, of feeling desired by another man, not because she lacked anything, but because she craved the power. I see it all so clearly now. It wasn't about love. It was never about love. Melissa had grown bored of the husband who came home exhausted but still kissed her goodnight, bored of the man who built a future with his hands instead of selling empty dreams, bored of being a wife when she still wanted to feel like a goddess. And Mark was a fucking snake, and he knew exactly how to slither into the cracks of our marriage. He wasn't just my best friend, he was my shadow, watching, waiting, calculating. He knew when I was working late, when I was too tired to notice the little things. He made her feel special, whispered poison in her ear, convinced her that she deserved better. And she fucking believed him. After that night, I didn't leave. They wanted me gone. Melissa filed a restraining order claiming she feared for her safety. Mark, playing the victim, claimed I attacked him out of jealousy. They spun their web so perfectly, so calculated, that by the time the police came knocking, I was already painted as the villain. The officers stood at my door, stone-faced. "Sir, we have a report of domestic violence. We need you to leave the premises." Melissa stood behind them, a fresh bruise on her lip, one I barely even caused, and crocodile tears rolling down her cheeks. He, he lost control. He's dangerous. And Mark, that piece of Sienna, was standing right next to her, arm around her waist, with a smirk so subtle I wanted to break his jaw again. But I didn't fight it. I just smiled, because they had no idea what was coming. The first thing I did? I drained every single account. Melissa was expecting to wake up the next morning with access to my money, expecting to live her perfect little fantasy with Mark on my dime. But when she checked, nothing. I had been smart over the years, kept hidden accounts, investments she didn't know about. By the time she even thought to look, everything was locked down tight, funneled into places she couldn't touch. Next, I burned her reputation to the effing ground. Melissa wasn't just some housewife. She had built a career, a well-polished corporate image. She needed people to see her as flawless. So I made sure everyone, her bosses, her clients, her coworkers, knew exactly who she was. Anonymous emails, screenshots, photos, proof. Mark and Melissa weren't exactly careful. Hotel receipts, secret accounts, a whole fucking archive of their affair laid bare. By the time I was done, Melissa lost her biggest clients, fired, reputation destroyed. Mark? Oh, Mark had more to lose. Because while I was working my A off to support my family, he was busy embezzling company funds. And wouldn't you know it? The IRS just happened to receive an anonymous tip with neatly organized records of his little side hustle. A week later, FBI, handcuffs, perp walk. But the best part, Melissa had no idea that the house she was so eager to kick me out of, it was never in her name. While she was busy fucking my best friend, I had quietly refinanced the mortgage. The papers were signed months ago without her. So when the sheriff's office arrived with an eviction notice, she stood there on the front lawn with a suitcase and nowhere to go. And as I watched her, standing in the cold, screaming, crying, begging, I finally felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. But I wasn't done yet. No, because Melissa still thought she had one last card to play. My children. She thought she could turn them against me, thought she could win full custody, raise them in a house built on lies, but she didn't expect what happened next. Because when my son saw her standing in the street, abandoned, disgraced, with nowhere to go, they looked at me, and they chose me. Melissa tried to fight, tried to convince the court that I was unstable, violent, unfit to be their father. But judges like evidence. And the evidence? It told a very different story. In the end, Melissa lost everything: her career, her home, her reputation, her lover, and worst of all, her children. Mark was rotting in a federal prison. Melissa was drowning in legal fees. And me? I walked away free, with my sons by my side, knowing that some betrayals don't just end in heartbreak, some end in total effing annihilation. I wish I could tell you that was the end, that I walked away, victorious, leaving the wreckage of Melissa and Mark's lives behind me like a bad dream. But life isn't that simple. Because Melissa wasn't done yet. She still had fight left in her, still had one last desperate move to play. And this time, she didn't just want to ruin me, she wanted me dead. After losing the custody battle, Melissa snapped. She tried to appeal, threw every accusation she could at the courts, claiming I was abusive, unfit, that my kids were brainwashed. But the truth was that my sons had seen everything. They saw her lie. They saw her cheat. They saw her standing on the front lawn like a pathetic, broken woman, begging for a house that wasn't hers anymore. She had no one left. Mark, rotting in a federal prison. Her family, disgusted with her. Her career, gone. She was drowning. And when people like Melissa drown, they drag others down with them. I had just started putting my life back together when the first threat came. A single envelope left on my windshield. No return address. Inside, a photo of my sons taken from a distance at school. And a note. I told you this wasn't over. I felt my blood run cold. She wouldn't. Would she? I underestimated Melissa, because when people lose everything, they become dangerous. The police wouldn't help. It's not a direct threat, they said. Could be a coincidence. A coincidence? A photo of my children from a stalker's perspective, with a handwritten note from my psycho ex-wife. Number, this wasn't over, so I did what any man would do when the system failed him. I handled it myself. First, I pulled my kids from school, homeschooled them, moved us to a rental under a different name. Then I started digging. Melissa was desperate, but she wasn't smart, and desperate people make sloppy mistakes. It didn't take long to find out she was living with criminals now, low-level thugs, men who owed Mark favors before he got locked up. And one of them was a hitman. That's when I knew. Melissa wasn't just trying to scare me, she wanted me dead. So I set the trap, a burner phone, a fake identity, a simple message sent through an encrypted app. I need someone gone, urgent. I didn't have to wait long. A reply came within the hour. A meeting was set. And when I walked into that seedy bar dressed like a man with nothing to lose, I didn't just find the hitman. I found Melissa, sitting across from him, smiling, like this was just another game. She didn't recognize me at first. I had changed, hardened. My beard was thicker, my frame leaner, my eyes colder. But when I sat down across from her, the color drained from her face. She knew. Her mouth opened. Wha? I slid the burner phone across the table, let her see the messages, let her see that I had recorded everything. Her betrayal, her desperation, her attempt to have me murdered. And then I leaned in close, my voice calm, and whispered, "Checkmate, B." By the time the police raided the bar, I was already gone. Melissa was arrested on conspiracy to commit murder. The hitman sang like a effing canary. She begged for leniency, begged for a deal. But the prosecutors, they weren't interested. She had already lost everything. Now, she was going to prison for a very, very long time. And me? I stood outside that courthouse, breathing in the cold air, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom, my kids were safe, my past was buried. And as I walked away, I realized Melissa was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Because she was the one rotting behind bars now. And I was just getting started. Melissa was gone, locked away, forgotten. And yet, I still wasn't satisfied. Because men like me, we don't just want revenge, we want justice. And justice isn't just about watching your enemies fall. It's about erasing their legacy, making sure their names are nothing more than a whisper of failure, a warning to anyone who might think about following in their footsteps. Melissa had tried to destroy me, so now I was going to erase her. The first step was rewriting history. Melissa had spent years building a perfect image, devoted mother, career woman, socialite. But I knew the truth. I had proof of the truth. So I started leaking things, one by one. First to the people she used to work with, the private messages, the fake expense reports, the evidence that she wasn't just cheating on me but stealing from her own company. Then to social media, the photos of her with Mark, the conversations where she mocked me behind my back, her plans to replace me before I even knew what was happening. Then the final blow, to our children. Not right away. I waited. Let them heal, let them see what kind of father I truly was, and when they were old enough, I sat them down and showed them everything, the affair, the lies, the attempt on my life, and in that moment I saw it in their eyes. Melissa wasn't their mother anymore. She was nothing to them. A ghost, a mistake, someone they would never forgive. Years passed. Mark, still rotting in prison. Melissa, a washed-up, forgotten inmate screaming into a void. Me, I thrived. I built a new life, a new empire, with my children by my side. And as they grew into men, I made sure they understood the lesson their mother had unknowingly taught us. Never trust snakes. Because snakes don't change. They don't love. They don't feel guilt. They only wait for the right moment to strike. But I was done being bitten. Melissa had tried to destroy me. Instead, she had made me into something she never expected. Untouchable, unbreakable, and forever the man who won.